Gunshot.
Protecting the president. These are the stories you never knew. A rioting mob surrounds President George Bush Sr. in Panama. Al-Qaeda targets President Clinton in Pakistan. And a lone wolf takes aim at President George W. Bush in the former Soviet Union.
Hand grenade was tossed at the President of the United States.
Now, for the first time, special agents relive these high-threat events.
Yeah, my heart was racing.
Dealing with the most important man, the most powerful person in the world, absolutely no margin for error.
Each Secret Service agent is ready to make the ultimate sacrifice.
I'd rather be dead than labeled a coward.
You owe it to your country to try to stay alive.
It was Friday. It's a beautiful sunny day. I was a shift later, and our shift was to fly with President Clinton on Air Force One to Cincinnati for a fundraiser. Routine trip.
But then the Secret Service gets word. The King of Morocco has died, and President Clinton must attend the funeral.
That's what's interesting about the Secret Service. I mean, here you are, you think you're going to Cincinnati. You end up flying 3,000 miles to another country for a funeral. And it's all at the last minute. Don't even blink. Where do you want me to go? Let's do it.
Special Agent Robert Rodriguez was about to confront the most dangerous and difficult assignment of his career.
Probably the most high-risk thing that I had experienced in the Secret Service. In 22 and a half years of serving as a special agent in the United States Secret Service, there are moments that we feel vulnerable. Probably the greatest moment was here working with President Clinton for King Hassan's funeral.
This was no ordinary memorial service.
60 heads of state showed up for this funeral. And not only President Clinton, former President Bush, Yasser Arafat, Jacques Chirac, kings, queens, presidents, ambassadors, ministers. Extremely problematic, absolutely.
Dozens of world leaders walking a 3.2-kilometer procession amidst a massive crowd. Thousands overwhelmed security. Any of them could be armed with weapons or explosives. For Agent Rodriguez, ensuring the safety of President Clinton is an almost impossible mission.
King Hassan was highly revered and highly regarded by his people and people outside the country of Morocco.
كانوا الناس مخلوعين وكانوا الناس كتبكيو. هذاك النهار ما كيتنساش للمغرب كاع كله هوانيه.
تصبنا بزاف زعما كون بحال الوالد بزاف تصبنا.
ويبكيو البكاء راه يعني الناس كتنعس في الارض يعني سخفوا بزاف.
When they opened up the doors of the palace, it basically opens up to a sea of humanity.
On the ground with Agent Rodriguez, Special Agent Rich Staropoli.
At the time, I was with the counter-assault team.
The counter-assault team is the Secret Service's unseen muscle for situations that warrant rapid assault and lethal force.
The function of the counter-assault team is to identify, locate, and neutralize any threat.
Today, threats are everywhere. When heads of state show up, so do fanatics, terrorists, and assassins.
We knew we were going to find ourselves right in the middle of it. The only thing that spins people up more than a religious conversation is the death of their leader. And when their leader happens to be a religious icon, that's the makings for something really bad to happen.
Rodriguez and his Secret Service agents assess the risks and request that the president only walk for part of the funeral procession. But the president has other plans.
President Clinton wanted to show his respect and reverence to the king And so we took that 2-mile walk.
They were really good about trying to be flexible because they knew I liked to be with people. They knew I liked to stop the motorcade in any foreign country and just get out and walk the streets.
This may look like a typical boulevard on an ordinary day, but on July 25th, 1999, imagine over 2 million people hanging in balconies, open windows, rooftops, sitting in trees, emotional, screaming, crying. It was a 2-mile procession from the palace to the mausoleum.
A 3.2-kilometer walk that challenges all known Secret Service tactics and procedures. The thousands in this uncontained mob are unscreened and present a potential threat. Guns, dirty bombs, suicide vests could be hidden anywhere.
It only takes one person. It creates great risk for us.
But the mission is a go, with no time to secure the route.
Knowing that we're not going to have the counter-assault team in place where we need them, the emergency motorcade where we'd like to have it, the counter-sniper team effectively doing their advance and counting how many windows exposed to the president, how many of those windows are open. We had none of that.
And as the funeral procession made its way through the streets of Morocco, people were coming out of the woodwork. There were people all over us. 2 million people doing anything they could to get close enough to that coffin.
The most obvious danger is never far from their minds.
If the people are that emotional and there's millions and they all rush to the casket, potentially could be trampled.
I came more and more to value what they did, the risks they took, and the risks they avoided. So if they weren't around, it would be harder to do the job, as well as riskier to do the job.
The job of the agents protecting President Clinton is getting riskier by the minute.
There was nothing holding these people back. They were free to roam and fill the streets at their will, and that's exactly what they did. And in the middle of it happened to have been the President of the United States and one of the former presidents of the United States, neither of whom were very well liked in that region.
Shift leader Agent Rodriguez takes up various positions to scope out potential attackers.
At one point, I moved out in front so that I could watch the rear coverage of the shift and also have a better vantage point of the whole situation.
While Agent Staropoli fights to stay on task.
The counter-assault team travels in a vehicle within the motorcade. So now you have a big decision to make here. Do you stay in the truck and basically run these people over to get to where you need to go, or leave the truck, abandon your vehicle, and walk? And that was the decision that we made. We left a driver with the vehicle, split the team, and then continued to parallel the president on foot.
At one point, they started to come over the barricades. That was very concerning.
You can't be afraid to lay hands on people. And at some points, that's exactly what you're doing in a crowd like that. You need to physically move people out of your way.
I'm thinking, where do we put the president? And the only place that I saw that had a potential opening and maybe some coverage was underneath the casket. This is when you start to get desperate. You're going to put the President of the United States underneath a casket?
The evidence is overwhelming. It's time to stop this walk.
This is no joke, and certainly when you're surrounded by 2 million people who are whipped up into a religious frenzy, it just got worse and worse.
Morocco. U.S. Secret Service agents Staropoli and Rodriguez face one of their most dangerous security missions: protect President Clinton from an out-of-control crowd.
In Morocco, it's just, you were walking through the middle of a prison riot where you didn't know what was going to happen.
For President Clinton and the agents sworn to protect him on this 3.2-kilometer walk, potential danger is all around. Sniper on the rooftop. Terrorist with a bomb.
You're dealing with tremendous unknown. You've got to focus on what you're doing, who's around you, and make an immediate decision. Is this guy a threat or not?
But sometimes you just have to make a dangerous situation work.
It's not the Secret Service's job to tell the president he can't go somewhere. It's our job to adapt and get him in and out of there safely.
Adaptability is key with 2 million potentially unscreened people closing in on the president. And the mausoleum still 800 meters away. Agents Staropoli and Rodriguez are fighting heat and exhaustion.
We're dressed all in black to include black boots and a load-bearing vest. So the total weight of each counter-assault team operator is approximately 50 pounds a gear. Very difficult to deal with something like that.
These agents are under tremendous strain. But one thought remains constant.
The one thing about the mission, I've never met an agent that ever second-guessed whether he would take a bullet for the president. I'd rather be dead than labeled a coward.
Agent Rodriguez and his officers are ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. When they reach their final destination.
After a 2-mile walk in about 100-degree temperatures, we finally made it to the mausoleum where you can see behind me King Hassan is laid to rest. And I recall walking up those stairs and how bright the marble was with the sun illuminating on it. It's a definite sigh of relief because this was an enclosed, protected area. We were inside. We knew this was the end, and frankly was pretty pleased that that was the end of that part of the day.
We fully expected something bad to happen. Whether it was going to be somebody fires a shot, whether it's at one of our protectees or just in general, fortunately it just never came to fruition.
President George Bush Sr. touches down in unstable territory.
In June 1992, the president was on a South American tour, and it was after the Panamanian revolt and overthrow of Noriega. Hostile takeover, and the decision was made that President Bush would stop in there to meet the new president.
Special Agent Funk was in Panama with the Counter-Assault Team, or CAT, highly equipped and battle-ready.
The CAT team are there to provide enhanced armament, enhanced weapons that the actual detail staff doesn't have.
Advance intel warns of grave risks.
We had been receiving intelligence that this was still a very tense area in Panama, especially Panama City, and there was still a high level of anti-American sentiment. Military checkpoints were still throughout the city.
A crowd of over 15,000 shows up to see President Bush.
This is a very festive atmosphere. Balloons, children in white dresses, singing songs. People were happy.
But 180 meters away, a group grows agitated.
The situation is deteriorating. The protest was so widespread, it encompassed many streets surrounding this plaza.
Anti-American demonstrators clash with police.
Agents behind them starting to have a heightened level of alertness. They realize, based on what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and the radio traffic, that there is a demonstration that is getting out of hand.
Special Agent Robert Rodriguez was also there.
I was on the counter-assault team. We could hear what was happening over the radio, that there was some kind of problem because of an unruly crowd that seemed to be gathering and getting too close to where the protectee was.
When we were receiving these reports over the radio, we were in our counter-assault vehicle, our black Suburban. It was strategic as quick access to the stage.
Agents are on edge. The hostile crowd is storming the park.
Thousands of people. This thing is starting to get out of control. The police are on high alert. They're intense. Police cannot contain. The crowd is advancing, and they're starting to breach the gate. The tear gas was deployed.
We could hear gunshots. We could hear chants. We knew there was a situation unfolding. There were a lot of people running around with guns. You have bad guys with bandanas like outlaws in the West with weapons. So it was a very confusing situation.
You're trying to mitigate risk. There's an unruly crowd and you hear gunfire. That's pretty much all you need to know. The well-being of the president is more important than the pomp and circumstance.
As a bad scene turns worse, Agent Funk braces for bloodshed.
We had reports that people were shot. This is a critical situation, and we in the Secret Service need to take action.
High stakes means big guns.
When we deployed and we came into that scene on the stage, basically a riot was unfolding, and it was just a matter of time before that riot overwhelmed where we were.
As the Panamanian police launch tear gas, the counter-assault team moves into action.
That was the first time a CAT team had a full formal deployment. The president is starting to feel the effects of the tear gas. In true President Bush fashion, he was reluctant to leave the stage.
The president wants to deliver the speech, but the Secret Service has another idea.
Tear gas, unruly mob, and gunshots. It's not a hard decision. Time to leave. And you have a split second to make the decision that you're going to cover and evacuate.
Cover and evacuate. The Secret Service's signature protective tactic.
The doctrines of the Secret Service: 360-degree coverage above, below, and around, and evacuate the president and get him out of there safely.
Agent Funk watches the tape.
This is the first time I'm seeing this footage. It's bringing back a lot of the pandemonium, the panic, and the confusion that was going on.
Agents act as trained. They cover President Bush, while Agent Funk and the CAT team create a shield between the president and danger.
We're charging our weapons. That's me in the front, that's me. It's a kneeling crouch position, which, should we have to go into a shooting situation, provides a very stable shooting platform.
Next step, evacuate. It's a harrowing escape. President Bush is quickly whisked into the safety of the armored limo.
The decision was made to remove the president to the secure environment of the limousine. The level of violence was there. The level of mayhem was present.
President Clinton is headed into a war zone. His objective: urge the government of Pakistan to restore democracy after a military coup.
Once we decided to go after bin Laden, the Al-Qaeda and the others, from the time I did that, I knew that whenever I was in another country where a terrorist might penetrate, I was in greater danger.
Danger couldn't be greater right now. Pakistan is Al-Qaeda territory, and Bill Clinton is a prime target.
This trip to Pakistan definitely put the resourcefulness of the Secret Service to the test. Things were breaking bad again in the region. Osama bin Laden was talking about death to America.
The most disturbing news comes from the CIA.
Intelligence agencies had information about bin Laden's intentions to attempt an assassination on President Clinton. It wasn't a good situation.
Special Agent Rich Staropoli was on the ground in Pakistan.
I was with the counter-assault team, where I was actually privy to a conversation where we did openly discuss amongst ourselves that our recommendation is don't go on this trip. To which I believe the reply was, well, it's your job to make sure nothing happens. So what do you say to that? Against our better judgment, we went into Pakistan. The Al-Qaeda community, the Taliban, they certainly didn't want to see the stars and bars flown in on Air Force One. Definitely not a place we want to go into. This is a huge undertaking, comparable to probably what went into the D-Day invasion. That's what went into this. We packed the entire world with us.
En route to Pakistan, the Secret Service gets word. More troubling intelligence.
Quickly, things go from bad to worse. A large cache of automatic weapons has been found in a house not too far from the airport runway that Air Force One was going to use. We're bringing everything with us into, the heart of Al-Qaeda headquarters. Our objective was to get in and out of there as quickly as possible. Let him accomplish what he needed to, and then get back to a safe haven.
In the air, Air Force One. On the ground, terrorists with easy access to weapons of war.
Shoulder-fired missiles, automatic weapons, AK-47s, which are so readily available in that region. Finding 50 of these is not a big deal. They're all over the place.
And now, intel that an attack on Air Force One may be imminent. A raid on a house near the airport flushes out insurgents armed with heavy artillery.
There was a real concern that as Air Force One was making its approach, that someone with a shoulder-launched weapon, a Stinger missile, could easily hit that plane and bring it down.
President Clinton is flying into Pakistan, but Air Force One is in the crosshairs. Special Agent Rich Staropoli knows an enemy lying in wait requires secret strategies and maneuvers.
From the very moment we start for this trip, all sorts of ruse tactics were employed.
The stunts and psych ops begin now.
So Air Force One is flown into Pakistan.
Agent Staropoli knows the airport runway is vulnerable to attack.
Perfect vantage point to accomplish the objective of shooting down an aircraft. From the end of that runway with the Stinger missile.
Air Force One approaches. At any moment, disaster could strike.
Certainly a good place for the unfriendlies to stage a hit. Not something we wanted to walk into. Here comes Air Force One on its final approach. It's coming in low, it's coming in slow, just like any other 747 would.
Then, those expecting to see the president are surprised by what happens next.
Plane lands, taxis, makes its turn, and parks. The staircase is wheeled up to Air Force One, door is open, and out steps the president. Only it wasn't the president. It was actually a Secret Service agent. While that was going on and all the eyes of the world's attention was drawn to Air Force One, a second plane came in, much smaller, unmarked, flying in a unique flight pattern, approached from the opposite direction and landed. And just prior to it stopping, the motorcade pulls up. The armored limousine parks in between the real Air Force One, and out steps President Clinton. So the ruse worked. The element of surprise was on our side for that time.
President Clinton stepped safely onto the tarmac. But the Secret Service remained on high alert. Intelligence warns that the Pakistani secret police might be infiltrated.
The briefings that we attended indicated that Pakistani and secret police was permeated with al-Qaeda sympathizers. Now you're driving down the middle of the road with the ISI, who was in the motorcade, that some of whom we were working with were al-Qaeda sympathizers. Incredibly tense situation, just prone to something happening.
And so the schemes and subterfuge continue.
Then it begins a shell game. You have 6 armored vehicles in the motorcade.
Riding in the presidential limo at the center of this paramilitary convoy is President Clinton. Or not.
As the motorcade would make its way from the airport, we began to move the limousine bearing the President of the United States. Back a few cars, and then moved an empty one up ahead. All the vehicles were flying flags, and all the vehicles had presidential seals on them, which is unusual. It'd be real difficult for anyone to figure out exactly which car he was in. You have 6 armored vehicles in the motorcade, now you have a 1 in 6 chance of being right and hitting the car bearing the president. So you have to continually be thinking, okay, if A happens, what am I going to do? If B happens, where are we going? There's a lot of communication that's going on while that motorcade is in motion. This is definitely a thinking man's game, and it certainly was that day.
We share your disappointment that previous democratic governments in Pakistan did not do better for their citizens.
Clinton's speech lasts a mere 15 minutes.
Clinton delivered his speech, which was pretty well received. Secret Service can't afford to relax. You still have to get out of there. And that's normally where people let their guard down.
The same threats loom on the way back.
We still don't know where Osama bin Laden is. We don't know how many other al-Qaeda operatives are running around.
I knew the Secret Service was there, and I knew they would do the best job anyone could do.
Agents rise to the occasion. President Clinton is bundled into the safety of his armored limo.
He got back in the motorcade and flew out of there. The trip is over. There's a big sense of relief. You can see it in the president. You can see it in the staff. We don't think it's a job well done until we land back at the White House.
President George W. Bush is flying into the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. He's scheduled to address a massive crowd in Tbilisi's Freedom Square.
The Georgian people love the United States. They felt grateful that the United States helped accelerate the collapse of the Soviet Union and therefore their freedom. So they wanted to show their appreciation to President Bush.
Special Agent Tom Fuentes headed up international operations for the FBI.
The Secret Service is responsible for the protection of the president, but if the U.S. president actually gets attacked, the FBI is responsible to conduct the investigation.
Agent Fuentes is at the very spot where President Bush had a chilling brush with death.
On May 10th, 2005, an event took place here that could have altered world history and especially American history.
Special Agent Brian Parman was the FBI agent on the ground in Tbilisi.
My job was to work in coordination with the Georgia Ministry of Internal Affairs to investigate crimes.
Today, Agent Parman is about to tackle the biggest crime of his career.
On the day of the speech at Freedom Square, the lines really started forming about 7 a.m. And obviously the Secret Service had set up magnetometers to screen the crowd in.
Magnetometers, or metal detectors. The Secret Service's first line of defense at any presidential event. And this one is growing in size by the minute.
By 10 a.m., it was evident that the crowds were much greater than what had been estimated. I mean, quite frankly, his popularity was absolutely amazing. They had named the highway leading out to the main airport after him. So the crowds swelled and continued to grow and continued to grow. And what was estimated to be 10,000 quickly grew to 25 to 50,000.
Some estimate as high as 100,000 people. They were jamming those security checkpoints.
And they were pushing against the magnetometer so much so that people were getting crushed. People were getting hurt.
So the Georgian authorities just shut off the machines and let everybody into the square completely unscreened.
For the Secret Service, this is a security nightmare.
Now, the Secret Service, knowing that George Bush would be speaking at 1:30 in the afternoon, advised him of how dangerous this was going to be to come out here in this square in front of tens of thousands of people who had not been screened and to give a speech.
But the president is determined.
He can't walk away from this. He has to address the people of Georgia. In spite of the danger, he is not going to leave this stage area. He's going to speak, and he does.
This crowd is officially a threat. With the metal detectors out of play, any of these people could be carrying a dangerous weapon.
They had an unscreened crowd. The best that you can do is try and move the crowd back to get some standoff and rely on the bulletproof glass in the podium.
But nearby, a man with murder on his mind.
მე როგორც მახსოვს, უბრალოდ ჩავიცვი. Უბრალოდ ანსაცმელი, როგორც ყოველთვის ქალაქში გავდივოდი. Я спокойно вовсе не был, но внешне так, может быть, выглядел. Я не знаю, реально. Вот такой вот приходит, и ты хлопаешь. Это мне очень больно было, вы понимаете, как-то вот непонятно это было мне.
Vladimir Aratunian is pushing his way closer to the stage. In his hand, he clutches an explosive packed with TNT.
Я просто долго в руках держал ее, понимаете? Чтобы не видно было, потому я ее вот так вот, платок завернул, вот так вот держал. Просто чтобы наподобие, как камень, вот так бросил, вот так.
President Bush is addressing an excited crowd in Tbilisi, Georgia. He doesn't know a man has marked him for death.
An individual located in the crowd wearing a dark leather jacket, wrapped a red scarf around a hand grenade, pulled the firing pin and threw the grenade toward the president.
Special Agent Parman was on the ground in Tbilisi.
A live hand grenade had been thrown in the crowd and landed approximately 50 feet from where the president was speaking.
Disaster was averted when the handkerchief, wrapped tightly around the grenade, slowed the firing pin.
The firing pin did not hit hard enough to actually set off the explosion. The fact that it didn't go off was just a miracle.
It landed short over in this area here, bouncing off a little girl's head. Now, at that time, a police officer here in the square observed that something had hit this little girl, and not knowing if it was a rock or some other debris, went over to see.
First responder, Officer David Nanabaidze, pounced on the bomb. Nanabaidze is carrying a live grenade, saving other lives by risking his own.
So you've come all this way, keeping it hidden.
Yes.
So the grenade has stayed hidden in your jacket. No one knows. No other police officers.
No.
Nobody knows you're holding this grenade.
Yeah, no.
Just you.
Only me.
Okay.
Yes.
So you come down here. You stop here.
Yes. Stop here and put the grenade in the. Yes.
The FBI determines this grenade was the real deal. It could have killed dozens of innocent people, including President Bush.
Your minister has told me that your nickname with everybody is Hero.
Yes.
This man was a great hero, just an incredibly brave Georgian public servant.
But this is a crime that needs to be solved. A potential assassin is on the loose.
We knew we would immediately have to dispatch agents far and wide.
I mean, very rarely do you see or get to be involved in an attempt on the life of the President of the United States.
We consider this act to be a threat against the health of
So yeah, my heart was racing.
the President of the United States.
I looked at my Secret Service colleague and my other colleague from the embassy, and we knew what we had to do. It's a manhunt. We have to solve this crime. We have to track down this perpetrator and show the world that no crime will go uninvestigated or unpunished. It was a priority matter. An attempt on the life of the President of the United States. The FBI is going to identify the individual and solve this crime. You can't get away with it, and we will hunt you until we capture you, and justice will be done. That's what we do for a living.
At FBI HQ in Washington, D.C., tensions are running high. Someone has tried to kill President Bush in Tbilisi, Georgia. The potential assassin is armed and dangerous. He's a fugitive, and the attack could be part of a larger terror plot.
Could this be part of the global jihad against the United States? Are there more people involved? Is this an al-Qaeda operation? When I'm informed of what has taken place here, the manhunt to find the suspect or suspects is underway.
What we had was a hand grenade, a cloth, and nothing else.
Evidence is limited. The FBI needs to take this investigation to the next level.
So firstly, we say it's important to get this on a press conference.
A hand grenade was tossed in the general direction of the main stage.
Get the word out to the community that this did happen, it was real, and that we needed their help in order to solve this crime.
To the Georgian people that had turned out at this event.
That planted the seed out there.
Then, a woman comes forward. She says she spied something suspicious at the event.
A person in the crowd was wearing a heavy leather jacket. Temperatures were at 90 degrees. He was sweating profusely and cursing to himself in Georgian. Then she mentioned he was wiping his neck and face with a tartan handkerchief, which absolutely alerted us this may be an investigative lead that we really need to follow.
The eyewitness provides a complete composite sketch from memory. And the FBI sorts through photos of the event looking for a match, but come up empty.
Unfortunately, it didn't lead to identification of the individual. We're frustrated, and we're losing time.
The clock is ticking. It's now 2 months after the attack on President Bush, and there's a wanted fugitive at large. American law enforcement is on high alert.
You're going to have an enormous manhunt for this individual.
The FBI post a wanted picture of the suspect and raise the stakes.
We offered a reward of $100,000, which in Georgia at that time was an incredible amount of money. Not long after that, an individual called in that said, "I believe that is my neighbor," with a name and address.
The name, Vladimir Aratunian. The address, a local housing project. The Georgian police force visits the suspect's apartment.
They passed in the stairwell.
But they don't recognize their man.
This individual had longer hair and a beard and looked nothing like the individual they were actually looking for.
These frontline officers are in for a nasty surprise.
He was carrying an AK-47 and began to engage the police officers.
Aratunian is shot 3 times, but not before he kills a Georgian officer in cold blood. He flees into the nearby woods.
And the Georgians did the right thing. They secured the area to ensure that he couldn't escape, and they actually called me and brought me up to the scene.
The Georgians bring in a SWAT team and police dogs to track Aratunian.
And we're able to arrest and apprehend Vladimir Aratunian in close proximity to his apartment. He confessed to the crime completely.
Vladimir Aratunian's prison. No camera has ever interviewed him here. Until now.
აი ფოტოები და რაღაცა ეს იყო როდესაც კომუნისტების დროს იყო ამიტომ რომ რა ვიცი რა ადამიანად თითლებოდა სამუშაო იყო.
Then refusing to cooperate, Aratunian sews his lip shut. He meets all the criteria of one of law enforcement's greatest fears. The disturbed loner prone to violence. During his first ever interview from prison, Aratunian suggests jail time had always been in his future.
მაშინაც იყვნენ დიდრები და ღარიბები, მაგრამ მაინც ისეთი განსხვავება არ იყო, რომ ერთი ვთქვათ ფულებში გორაობდეს, მეორე ვთქვათ ქუჩაში იყოს და შიმშილით ყვდებოდეს. ეგეთი რემონ იყო.
Aratunian's penchant for violence lands him behind bars for life. No possibility of parole.
We just want that person put in a position where they can't do it again. And that's where Aratunian is today. A few short miles from this location, he's in a Tbilisi jail and will spend the rest of his life there.
This case is cracked, but the job of protecting the president grows more dangerous every year.
We have to be on our game 100% of the time. There is no room for error.
Presidential agents work around the clock to prevent the next big attack.
And that takes interagency collaboration. We will turn over every single rock. We will talk to every single person. We will find you and see justice done.